The warp reflects the emotions of the soul-bearing species, a nightmarish realm just beyond reality, or more recently, a much more integral part of it. Within the Immaterium reside the Chaos Gods, and from these immeasurably powerful entities come the Neverborn. These beings are shards of their god, an extension of their patron's will, and a portion of their power, but unlike the gods, they are not permanently bound to the warp. This allows them to enter the material realm, though not always for long, and even when they manifest alone, they can be incredibly dangerous for the worlds they enter. On rare occasions, whole armies of their kind can manifest via warp rifts, their coming spelling doom for planets or systems either from the warp bleeding into reality or simply due to their sudden, murderous onslaught. Though their true appearance is said to be subjective and their individual names are almost never known, those unfortunate few aware of their existence commonly refer to them as demons. In today's log, we document what we know of demon kind, how they come to exist in the warp and invade reality, as well as the famous demons not from originally mortal origins. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and welcome to 40k Stories. The Chaos Gods have existed since pretty much forever, coalescing into being as reflections of the emotions of the soul-bearing species. Their power is incomparable, and the great game they constantly play is pretty much incomprehensible, but they do not fight each other directly, at least as far as we know. Instead, they send vast armies of demons at one another, siphoning off portions of their own power to create their soldiers. As a result of being so intrinsically tied to the gods, the demons are, in a way, naught but puppets of their patrons, playing their part in the great game, even if they don't want to. Such is the power of the Ruinous Powers that they command legions upon legions of demonic soldiers, though their numbers are far from constant as the power of their creator waxes and wanes over the course of the great game. As you might expect, these demonic warriors are reflections of their god's nature, and they fight in a manner befitting their patron, as we shall see later on. Not all demons are created equal. Some are mighty generals, known as greater demons, but we'll cover those a little later as well. As a result of their warp-forged nature, demons are usually confined to the Immaterium, but the dissimilarities between them and the mortal races do not end there. The true form and appearance of a demon is a little bit of an unknown. Though there seems to be a commonly accepted look for each type of demon, it is said that their appearance varies from one observer to the next, and so we cannot be sure, especially when Tzeentch and his shenanigans get involved. Demons are also functionally immortal. They can be banished from the mortal realms for a period of time, but the only way it seems to take them out is, well, you can't. Only the god who created a pure demon, i.e. a not demon prince who seems to play by their own sort of rules, can destroy them by reabsorbing the power they used to create the demon in the first place. It is likely that this is one of the only reasons a demon stays loyal to its patron god, no matter what the circumstances. Holding the sole power over your existence, it will do that after all. The Dark Gods are honestly extremely callous with this destruction, creating and absorbing demons practically on a whim when necessary, so even going along with your patron's plan is not a guarantee of a continued existence, much less a permanent one. That's not to say the gods don't take notice of their servants. Just like mortals, a demon can win the favour of their patron god, which at least for lesser demons can lead to a promotion to become demonic heralds, at least that's how I think it works. Suffice it to say, life/existence for a demon is probably not a good one most of the time, as even when not committed to the battlefields of the great game, they are not safe. One only needs to look at Tzeentch's demon-eating library if you want evidence of that. This is one of many reasons why demons seek to break into the material realm. If there is one thing that all demons have in common, regardless of their god, it is a lust for the material realm in some form or another. It may be seen as an escape from the constant, almost monotonous grind of the great game, or a chance to make a real, lasting mark on something. Since the warp is a giant middle finger to logic and science, the events within it don't truly affect it in the long term. Going into reality, though, that you can affect. However, getting into said reality is not as simple as it might seem. Demons can't just appear whenever and wherever they wish, as if they could, I suspect there wouldn't be a reality left at this point. Instead, they need a conduit or a rift of some sort, a bridge between materium and immaterium that they can use to access our realm, and if a large number want to get in, then it needs to be a pretty big rift. The conditions required for such a rift are very random. It could be the accidental side effect of a psyker's power, a ritual conducted by a chaos cult, or simply a large amount of death and suffering in a single place. They don't usually last long either, and almost no warp rift is permanent. Admittedly, the new Cicatrix Maledictum, along with the Eye of Terror and Maelstrom, do prove that there can be permanent ones. They're just the overwhelming minority. As a result, a large-scale demon invasion, known often as an incursion, can simply be outlasted, as once the rift fades, the demons become weaker due to the being severed from the warp. But it's not a sound stratagem. The random nature of chaos means there's no way of knowing how long you'd have to wait them out. Unfortunately, there's often no choice but to do this. The demons cannot be driven off unless the rift is sealed or closes of its own accord, and almost no one is capable of sealing it or even getting close enough to try. The demons do have some defense against a closed rift, however, as possession of a mortal host allows them to remain in the mortal plane for much longer, if not permanently. I suspect that, rather like the Genestealer cults, a single demon could access a world via possession and then engineer a bigger invasion given enough time and space to work with. However, there is also a drawback to possession for the demons, otherwise why wouldn't all of them do it, as their power is greatly restricted by the body they're inhabiting. But it may be worth it if they can find a suitable host to unleash maximum mayhem with. If you wish to imagine living through a demonic incursion for some mad reason, then an analogy is often made to hell being unleashed upon the material realm, with people seemingly exploding at random and the typical tactics of war being, well, practically useless. The demons do not have to enter and leave the material realm through the warp rift, their armies able to do so entirely at random, and their formations range from divided raiding parties to unstoppable frontal assault with no discernible motive. Remember the great game? Yeah, gets confusing. And even if the incursion can be contained, even by the planetary defenders or by external intervention by groups like the Grey Knights, being present for and witness to it can be a death sentence in itself. The Inquisition and the Imperium are desperate to keep knowledge of demons hidden from the populace, understandably so, and so the survivors will often be interred into labour camps or even killed to keep their experiences a secret. Same goes to the planet actually, which can be subjected to exterminatus. In some cases, particularly if the rift can trap the victim world within it for a time, the invasion can deform real space itself and the warp's corruption can mutate the planet into a demon world. Demon worlds are, in a way, the warp manifested in reality. Like the Immaterium, they defy the laws of physics, and they're actually incredibly resistant to even the effects of exterminatus. Though most of them are within the Eye of Terror, ruled over by demon princes who have a better comprehension of the mortal plane than regular demons, some exist within the material realm under close inquisitorial watch. Remember, they cannot actually destroy them. The most powerful of the Neverborn, at least most of the time demon princes kind of confuse the debate, are the greater demons. These creatures are the generals and the wardens of the domains of their patron gods, leaders of the demonic incursions on the majority of occasions. They're notoriously harder to summon than lesser demons, as they require possession to enter the material realm, even probably when sustained by a warp rift. Each god has their own greater demon that embodies their own style of warfare, and for Slaanesh, that is the Keeper of Secrets. Sounds like a Tzeentchian name if I'm being honest, but I'm sure Slaanesh had its reasons for the title. Keepers of Secrets know every hidden desire of mortals, and will often exploit that in battle with promised whispers. Those who encounter them seem to lose all self-will and have their senses overwhelmed. However, it is believed that they're only unleashed as a last resort, when there's no option left for deception, only force and ultraviolence. To this end, the Keepers of Secrets are sublime fighters all, lightning fast like all Slaaneshi demons, but augmented with powerful psychic abilities too. Their appearance is said to mirror whatever Slaanesh's mood was when it was created, so I suspect there is a wide diversity in the aspects of these greater demons given the various excesses of emotions associated with She Who Thirsts. Though there is no particularly renowned Keeper of Secrets above the rest, I wish to draw attention to one, Heartslayer. This demon was able to infiltrate the Eldar craftworld Keris, seducing the daughter of the craftworld's Autarch in order to open the way for Slaaneshi's armies to invade. In the battle, Heartslayer was able to defeat an Avatar of Cain in combat and then possess its soulless shell to lead the conquest of the Eldar in the guise of their own fallen god. I can't be the only one who appreciates the irony of that. I'm sure Slaanesh did. As far as lesser demons go, The most common servant of Slaanesh is known as a demonette. These capricious demons serve as courtiers, courtesans, and messengers for the Dark Prince, with ranks seemingly denoted by how close they're allowed to go to Slaanesh's throne in the Palace of Pleasure. They're said to be both beguilingly beautiful and horrifying in equal measure, and in battle they are much the same. For those select few allowed close enough to Slaanesh's throne so as to be in contact with the god, the rank of herald is granted as a sign of favour. They act as generals probably as often as keepers of secrets, but they're often not designed for violence in the same way as the greater demon. Instead, they are the shadowed, subtle hand of Slaanesh, twisting and corrupting mortal minds. The chief handmaiden of Slaanesh was once the demon now known only as the Mask, so named for the incident that saw it fall. After a deception by Tzeentch, Slaanesh was in a foul mood, and the Mask sought to cheer the god up with a scintillating dance as it had often done before, but it backfired massively, and rather than be pleased, Slaanesh was further enraged. The Mask was banished, cursed to dance for all of eternity if that was what it wished to do, and so it does. I'm curious as to whether it seeks to regain favour with Slaanesh, or whether it is still granted a level of respect amongst the demons of the Dark Prince, but whatever its standing or stance, it still seems to serve Slaanesh in a way. Such is its skill that it can even beguile other demons with its dancing, even causing them to die from trying to keep up despite no psychic abilities, but actually, it's not perfect. It is said once to have infiltrated a Harlequin troop and performed the same trick it so often does, but the arrival of a solitaire was able to, eventually, shatter the illusion. What took place can only be described as a dance-off for the next 6 consecutive days, which only ended when the demon missed a step and caused its spell to break. As a result, the Mask holds a hatred for the Harlequins beyond even the other Eldar, and I suspect more than one troop has been danced to death by it since that battle with the Solitaire. The Mask most recently appeared during the fracture of Biel Tarn, attempting to break into the Infinity Circuit of the Craftworld during its invasion, and it would have been able to do so had it not been for the intervention of Ivrain and the newly birthed Incarn. When and where it will choose to strike next in the material plane is impossible to fathom, along with all demons, but if the Mask deigns to dance in the materium again, I hope I'm not anywhere nearby. For those wondering, we do not know if Slaanesh has promoted a new chief handmaiden to its side, but if it has, I'll be interested to find out what it does to keep Slaanesh entertained. Well, actually, no, don't answer that. Probably best I don't know. Slaanesh's chief rival is, of course, the blood god Khorne. As one might expect, his demons are probably the finest warriors amongst the Neverborn, chief amongst which are the greater demons known as Bloodthirsters. Clad in brass warp-forged armour, they are perhaps the greatest warriors both in and outside the warp, tireless slaughterers armed with demon weapons with a measure of protection from the hated sorcerous arts. They all know the price of failure in their command or mission, to have their skull added to the pile under the brass throne, and so any surviving Bloodthirster will be a consummate general. There are actually 8 hosts of Bloodthirsters, representing the hierarchy within their ranks, and though we don't know all of the hosts, we do know of their overall leader, or at least Khorne's most favoured anyway. Angrath the Unbound is the guardian of the Throne of Skulls, created by Khorne as his ultimate expression of destruction, but he was actually defeated by Lorgar before the Horus Heresy to prove the Primarch's devotion to chaos. Go Angrath. Very rarely summoned due to the risks involved, Angrath is nonetheless one of the most feared demons ever encountered, able to drown worlds in blood before the Grey Knights can even arrive to try and banish him. However, Angrath has not been Khorne's champion for eternity. He's actually the replacement for, and improvement on, what may have been the original, Khorne's most devoted follower, Skarbrand. Able to desolate star systems and even raise the first planet of Slaanesh, Skarbrand was favoured indeed, but he was undone by his pride and rage via the manipulations of Tzeentch. The Changer of Ways poked and prodded at the Bloodthirster, fanning his range to such an extent that, when Khorne's attention was elsewhere, Skarbrand attacked his patron with a blow mighty enough to destroy an army and even chink the god's armour. Of course, it did nothing of any import to Khorne save infuriate the Blood God, who seized his now formerly favoured Bloodthirster and choked him off everything save the rage that led to the attack. With that, Khorne held Skarbrand aloft as an example to all and threw him across the warp so hard it took 8 days for him to land. Upon his landing, Skarbrand roared and set out on a crusade of blood, driven by his only remaining emotion of unbridled rage. Ironically, he has shed more blood and thus been a greater servant of Khorne in his exile than he had ever been in full service, but even if he does seek redemption, he will never find it. For those wondering why Angrath has never sought out his predecessor to put him down, especially since the two are known to hate each other because, well, Skarbrand hates everything, Khorne has actually forbidden the two from fighting as they're both far too useful to waste one of their lives in a duel. The lesser demons of Khorne are known as bloodletters, literally violence and murder given form, but also regimented warriors when on the march to war. Admittedly, once combat is joined, they'll become frenzied by blood and the urge to kill and win favour, making their assault nigh unstoppable, if a bit uncontrollable, with their glowing hellblades. The strongest amongst them are known as heralds, minor generals who can imbue their warriors with their own rage, but perhaps the greatest of all bloodletters is Skulltaker, officially the bearer of the title of Khorne's champion. Yeah, it's not a bloodthirster, it's a bloodletter. Originally a bloodletter known as Uzul, Skulltaker's first action upon his creation was to decapitate the first thing he saw, another bloodletter. He then wandered the warp and reality, decapitating any worthy warrior he came across, eventually taking 888, which, because Khorne, saw him anointed as the blood god's chosen executioner. He now seeks out the greatest champions on the battlefield, cutting them down if they refuse his challenge, or overpowering them in a duel if they accept. He then takes their head, using the powers of the warp to strip its flesh, before moving on to the next target. At battle's end, he returns to the brass citadel with his haul of skulls for the Skull Throne. Khorne takes most, of course, but the best of Skulltaker's kills are permitted to be kept by the demon, weaved into his cloak of skulls that he wears. I don't quite know how many are allowed to be kept, at least as a percentage, but it's probably only a tiny fraction. On occasion, Skulltaker will also deign to ride a juggernaut called Kul Tiran into battle, said to be the most ferocious of all juggernauts, with the highest juggernaut murder count of its species. Yeah, they fight each other and kill each other a lot, that's a thing. Bloodletters who feel particularly ballsy or powerful can attempt to take a juggernaut as a mount, but this is no easy feat and sees a large portion of the demons killed by their prospective steeds, but doing so is a great boon to the demon that makes them into shock cavalry known as blood crushers. Kul Tiran and Skulltaker make a potent combination, with the executioner seeing the Juggernaut as the only one of its kin capable of the deeds required of it, and Khorne is so pleased with the pair that Kul Tiran is actually allowed out of the Juggernaut holding pens to wander the brass citadel freely. They're never there for long, however, as Skulltaker's bloodlust will drive him back to war either with or without Kul Tiran. Unlike with the mask, I don't want to be anywhere nearby when that next happens. Befitting the one known as the Changer of Ways or the Great Conspirator, Tzeentch's demons are possessed of a high intellect, powerful magics, or both. The Lord of Change, Tzeentch's greater demons, certainly fall into the both category. Their psyches beyond almost any mortal, with a mind blessed with a fragment of their god's unfathomable intelligence. They may still be pawns of the architect of fate, just like all demons to their gods, but their scheming and plans have still brought great change and ruin to the galaxy. It is said that a person's soul and base thoughts are laid bare before a Lord of Change, allowing them to be manipulated effortlessly by the demon, which revels most of all in hugely altering the strands of fate. Universally despising the very concept of predictability, Lords of Change are mighty warriors but consummate generals too, usually staying out of direct combat to unleash sorcerous power and dictate the flow of the battlefield. Such as their prescience, surprising or ambushing them is all but impossible. Pretty much the only time they lose is when Tzeentch himself tricks them and makes them lose. However, the most famous of their number is almost never committed to the battlefield. Kairos Fateweaver, Oracle of Tzeentch. For Tzeentch, the only mystery left to solve is that of the Well of Eternity, a maelstrom of sorts in the heart of his impossible fortress that even the god may not survive in if he ventured to comprehend it. Of course, Tzeentch had no such qualms about risking his demons in the well, and threw his vizier Kairos into it, just to find out what would happen. And somehow, the potential god-killing well spared Kairos, who crawled out irrevocably changed. His head had split in two, each entirely separate from the other. One perfectly sees the past for what it was, whilst the other can clearly see the future that can and will come to pass, but both are blind to the present, which is why Kairos is kept away from the chaos of the battlefield unless absolutely necessary. If he's injured, he'll often retreat in fear that Tzeentch is deceiving him. This perfect foresight is an ability even Tzeentch does not possess, and so the Lord of Change is almost constantly at his Lord's side, babbling away about both past and future, whilst 9 times 9 of his compatriots record his words. On rare occasions, mortals or demons will even be granted an audience with Kairos to ask the Oracle what they will, but this is not as great a gift as it could be perceived as. One of Kairos' heads will tell the truth, whilst the other will deliver an equally believable lie. The only known occasion for this not to happen was again during Lorgar's pilgrimage, when both heads spoke the truth to the Word-Bearer's Primarch. Fateweaver was about again later in the Horus Heresy, personally trying and failing to corrupt Lionel Johnson before the Dark Angel's Primarch was able to stab him with his blade and ask whether he saw it coming. Full marks for the quip line, probably he didn't. More recently, he, along with Scarbrand, got mixed up with the return of the Warboot Gilliman, but the actions of Cypher and the Shadow Seer Silandri Vale Walker saw the rebirthed Primarch freed from the clutches of the Red Corsairs allied to the Oracle. As for Tzeentch's lesser demons, there are the Pink Horrors, literally magic incarnate. Cackling maniacally, they're an undisciplined riot of noise and sorcery on the battlefield, only becoming more jovial as they mutate and immolate their foes with warp fire. Their mood never changes, save upon death. Well, I say death, but that would be a lie. If a pink horror is destroyed, it does not return to the warp, but instead splits into 2 smaller demons known as blue horrors. Unlike their larger brethren, blue horrors are somber, morose, and argumentative, always blaming their other half for their loss of their pinkness. Such is the case for the Blue Scribes, a pair of blue horrors tasked by Tzeentch with restoring the god to glory. He created his weakest type of demon for the job because their eternal bickering and comparatively low intellect would stop them becoming a threat. Those who know of the warp know the tale of Tzeentch's staff. Once, the Architect of Fate dominated the warp to the point that it took the other 3 gods combined to even challenge him. However, rather than run the risk of a defeat, Tzeentch seemed to surrender. He broke his mighty crystal staff, shattering it entirely with each shard taking the form of a spell. This is also supposedly the point at which magic became available to mortals. However, the ever-planning Tzeentch had a contingency ready, and created the Blue Scribes to collate the combined arcane knowledge of the universe. If they can record every known spell, the Staff of Tzeentch will be effectively remade, and Tzeentch will rise again. Granted a disc of Tzeentch, effectively a mutated Screamer, to aid their quest, one scribe, Ptarix, is the main cataloguer and spell siphon, whilst his twin, Ziratpa, is the primary spellcaster by reading the scrolls they wrote the spells on, with a healthy amount of good bickering for good measure. Of course. It's unknown how much of their work the Blue Scribes have actually completed, and probably it's not an insignificant portion. For everyone and everything else's sake, I hope they never finish. The only horrors known not to split from pink to blue permanently are the Heralds, the most intelligent and sorcerously skilled of their kin. If they are divided, the 2 halves are able to reform into a pink horror once again. There's also been evidence of a smaller 3rd division of horrors known as Brimstone Horrors, but we know comparatively little about them. They seem like spiteful buggers that you really do not want to get messed up with. Finally, we come to Nergal. His demons are probably the most physically repulsive to look at, and yet they're often very cheerful as they go about their work, spreading disease and whatever else they feel like doing. The greater demons of Nergal are known as Great Unclean Ones, and like many other greater demons, they share a lot with their patron. In fact, this is probably truest for the Great Unclean Ones. Not only do they share his personality and their affection for their servants, but they also look pretty physically similar to the Plague Father too. They are, despite being hulking abominations, possessed of a boundless energy and enthusiasm for their work, drawing motivation from pretty much whatever motivates mortals, and coordinating/driving on Nergal's host. They see and love demons below them like their own children, just as Nergal does, and any who survive the battlefields they walk on but become infected will come to love them too. One of the most famous Great Unclean Ones is Ku'gath, also known as Plague Father, but he did not enter existence as a greater demon. He was actually naught but a Nurgling, the smallest of Nergal's demons, perched on the shoulder of Lord of Decay whilst the god toiled at his cauldron. He fell into the cauldron, drinking its contents and then gorging himself on the whole damn lot of it, swelling in power to become a Great Unclean One. Nergal frankly found the whole affair hilarious, but the newly grown Ku'gath, he wasn't so happy. The god had been working on the most virulent toxin ever, and though the demon was now the embodiment of it, there was none of the mixture left. Ku'gath took it upon himself to recreate this perfect toxin, and it's been his mission ever since. Unlike the normally cheery Great Unclean Ones, Ku'gath is somber and analytical, always striving to study and learn. He is amongst the most eager to enter the Materium, using his palanquin as a mobile laboratory. He produces Nerglings from his own body and will use them as both projectiles and vectors for his current concoction. Of course, his common forays from the warp mean he has been fought on many occasions, actually being banished by the Greynets on 2 separate ones, and most recently he was involved in the Plague Wars fought in Ultramar. He supposedly is at least, if not higher standing than Mortarion, but whether he was in charge of the invasion or whether Mortarion got dibs, not so sure. He and 7 hosts of demons invaded the agri-world of Eax, which was planned for conversion to a hospital planet, and so we'd be about as anti-Nergal as it gets. They were ultimately successful in this invasion, well, sort of. Mortarion and Gilliman would duel on the planet, with the Death Guard withdrawing under the cover of virus bombs, leaving Eax as a death world. Ku'gath may well still be in the Materium, as Nergal is forced to defend the region known as the Scourge Stars from the attention of the other Chaos Gods. Tzeentch brought an end to the fight by proposing a contest of champions to settle the whole affair, and I suspect Ku'gath would qualify as a champion, as a Lord of Decay. The lesser demons of Nergal are known as Plague Bearers, but unlike other demons, they are not spawned from Nergal directly. Rather, they are the energy of souls killed by the infamous, legendary Nergal's Rot. They are, unlike the Great Unclean Ones or the playful Nerglings and Beasts of Nergal, incredibly somber like Ku'gath, for their role is that of cataloguers, trying to tally every single new outbreak of plague. Of course, this is an impossible task, and losing count in combat is a constant source of frustration for the Plague Bearers. They chant constantly as their counting method, and such is the nature of Nergal that one can fall ill just by hearing it. If a soul holds out against Nergal's Rot for longer than most, a Herald of Nergal will be spawned instead, a much tougher demon capable of harnessing psychic powers. The most famous of the Plague Bearers or Heralds is Epidemius, the chosen tallyman of Nergal, who must log every disease in the universe. Born into battle on a palanquin just like Ku'gath is, his scribblings are distilled by Nergal in practically real time, meaning that any mistake is dire for the tallyman, so his attendant Nerglings are the quietest of their kind to ensure that no errors are made. However, it is a two-way street. If Epidemius does well and records a lot, the Lord of Decay can bless his followers that share the battlefield with the tallyman. Unsurprisingly, Epidemius spends much of his time on the battlefield or similarly infectious places, but the largest event he's known to have attended was the Battle of Calth in the Horus Heresy, following a Wordbearer summoning. It's unknown if Nergal has an endgame for Epidemius like Tzeentch does with the Blue Scribes, especially since Ku'gath's mission is more akin to that of the Twin Blue Horrors, but I doubt the god wants every disease ever to appear to be catalogued just for reasons because he was curious. Whatever it is, and I'm aware I've said this a lot in this log, I hope any grand plan that is there never comes to pass. And if it does, I certainly don't want to see it. And there you have it, a somewhat detailed look into demons and the most famous demons of each Chaos God. One might actually feel a level of sympathy for the demons in a way. They're slaves to their creators, destroyed on a whim or out of necessity, and they're thrown into massive, endless, pointless wars as part of the great game. However, their actions both inside and outside the warp are evidence that they're still evil entities really, and entering a bargain with one will almost never end well for the mortal or mortals involved. The best known of their kind are usually deadly on the battlefield, or more frighteningly, some also seem to be working toward their patrons' end goals, which, quite frankly, it's the Chaos Gods, that is never a good thing. Nonetheless, I'm glad to have spoken of them, so at least you know what to expect a little bit from the denizens of the warp. Now, moving forward, I wish to address an ancient log of our mutual human friend, looking at a particular group of Xenas we actually mentioned today. Consider it a redux if you must, but it should provide a great level of insight before we begin our next great adventure. Yes, you thought the Legion series was an adventure? Well, we've got another one to start. Thank you all for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again. Goodbye.